I gasped for air, my eyes flying open as I jolted back to life. The hospital ceiling came into focus, harsh light burning my eyes. My husband's tear-stained face hovered above me, relief washing over him. Beeping machines and the sharp smell of disinfectant filled my senses. But I couldn't focus on any of that. My mind was spinning from what I'd just been through. For 7 minutes, I'd been clinically dead. In that time, I saw something incredible, something I couldn't explain. The memory of it was there, but fuzzy, like a dream slipping away as you wake up. As I tried to understand it all, I knew one thing for sure. My brush with death had changed me forever. The aroma of simmering tomato sauce filled the kitchen as I stirred the pot, the rich scent mingling with the warmth of freshly baked garlic bread. It was a typical Tuesday evening, and I hummed softly to myself, savoring the comforting routine of preparing dinner for my family. Mark would be home soon, and I could already imagine his appreciative smile as he walked through the door, briefcase in hand. I reached for the wooden spoon to taste the sauce, my mind drifting to the mundane details of our day. Lisa's soccer practice, the pending deadline at work, the leaky faucet that needed fixing, all the small concerns that make up a normal life. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, marking the rhythm of our ordinary existence. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through my chest, stealing my breath away. The wooden spoon clattered to the floor as I clutched at my heart, confusion and fear flooding my senses. The world began to spin, the familiar kitchen blurring into a dizzying whirl of colors and shapes. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of the counter as my legs threatened to give way beneath me. "Mark," I tried to call out, but my voice emerged as little more than a strangled whisper. The pain intensified, a crushing weight pressing down on my chest. Panic rose within me as I realized something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just indigestion or stress. This was something far more serious. Through the haze of pain, I heard the front door open. Mark's cheerful greeting died on his lips as he took in the scene before him. His briefcase hit the floor with a thud, and in an instant, he was at my side, his strong arm supporting me as my legs finally gave out. "Amelia, what's wrong?" The fear in his voice mirrored my own. I couldn't answer, couldn't form the words to explain the terror gripping my heart. Mark's face swam before me, his features contorted with worry as he lowered me gently to the floor. With trembling hands, he fumbled for his phone, his voice rising in panic as he spoke to the 911 operator. "My wife, I think she's having a heart attack. Please hurry." The words seemed to come from far away, growing fainter with each passing second. As consciousness began to slip away, a detached part of my mind recalled reading about sudden cardiac arrest, how it could strike without warning, even in seemingly healthy individuals, how every second counted in the race to restore blood flow to the brain and vital organs. But those clinical facts seemed meaningless now, lost in the overwhelming reality of my failing body. The world around me began to fade, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. Mark's voice grew more distant, his words of reassurance blending with the wail of approaching sirens. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him I loved him, but my body refused to respond. As the last vestiges of consciousness slipped away, a curious sensation began to overtake me. The pain in my chest receded, replaced by a spreading warmth. The darkness that had threatened to engulf me began to recede, giving way to a faint glimmer of light. It grew steadily brighter, beckoning me forward into the unknown. Little did I know that this light would lead me to an encounter that would change everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the very nature of existence itself. A warmth spread through me, unlike anything I'd ever felt. It started as a tingle in my fingers and toes, then flowed through my body. The pain from before vanished, replaced by a feeling of weightlessness and peace. A soft, pulsing light surrounded me, growing brighter. As my eyes adjusted, I found myself in a place beyond words. Strange colors danced at the edges of my vision. The air felt thick with love, wrapping around me like a hug. Tears filled my eyes, but they were tears of joy. I felt more at home here than I ever had before. My worries melted away, leaving a deep sense of peace. I realized I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. The everyday stuff, the sauce on the stove, the ticking clock, even my sick body, seemed so far away. I'd crossed into something I couldn't understand, a place outside of time and space. As I looked around in wonder, I felt a presence. I couldn't see or hear it, but I felt watched over, completely known and loved. The feeling grew stronger, and my heart started racing with excitement. Who would I meet here? Before I could think more about it, the light in front of me began to take shape. As it became clearer, I saw I was face to face with Jesus Christ himself. He didn't look like the paintings in churches. He was pure light and love. His eyes, full of kindness and wisdom, met mine. When he smiled, I felt my spirit lift. Standing there with him, I knew this moment would change everything. I felt comforted by his presence, but I also sensed something big was about to happen. I was eager but nervous to hear what he had to say. His eyes held both eternity and love. Standing before Jesus, I felt small yet important. His warmth surrounded me, washing away my fears. I couldn't look away from his understanding gaze. We connected beyond words, soul to soul. In a moment, I grasped more about existence and God's love than I had in my whole life. Though he was so far beyond me, I wasn't afraid. I felt peaceful, knowing I belonged here. As we bonded, I sensed urgency from Jesus. His eyes grew serious, and I felt the weight of what was coming. When Jesus spoke, it echoed through me. "Amelia," he said, making my name sound new. "I brought you here for a reason. The world's at a turning point, and my people need to be ready." My heart pounded. What could be so important? I waited, nervous and excited as Jesus went on. "Hard times are coming," he said, his words heavy with meaning. "Many will be fooled by lies, but my faithful ones must stay strong and shine in the darkness ahead." As he talked, I saw flashes of what was to come. Chaos, but also hope. I realized this wasn't just for me. It was for everyone. "Tell them, Amelia," Jesus said, his intense gaze holding mine. "Tell them to build their faith now, to get close to me before the troubles start. Time's running out and every person matters." The task he gave me felt huge. I felt humble, but also fired up. How could I share such a big message with a world that often cares about little things? But looking at Jesus again, I knew he'd help me do it. His love and strength would get me through whatever came next. As our meeting ended, I got ready for what was ahead, knowing this message could change lives and prepare people for the tough times coming. The peaceful light around me faded, replaced by darkness that chilled me to my core. Jesus' expression turned serious as he put his hand on my shoulder. "Amelia," he said, his voice both loving and sad, "I need to show you what's coming for the world." Suddenly, I saw visions of the future unfold. It was chaos and despair, so different from the peace I'd just felt. I watched armies fighting across whole continents, using weapons I couldn't even imagine. Missiles flew through the sky, leaving fire behind them. Everything was full of smoke and people crying out in pain. I saw society falling apart too. People who used to be friends now feared each other. There were huge lines at grocery stores, with people fighting over what little food was left. The streets were wild, and the police couldn't keep things under control. Jesus spoke over all the noise. "These are the signs of the end times," he said. Wars everywhere, countries fighting each other, hunger, disease, earthquakes all over. This is just the start of the trouble. The visions kept going, showing me more specific things. A lie spread across the whole world, led by someone who seemed nice, but was actually leading people away from the truth. There were false prophets doing things that looked like miracles, making even strong believers doubt what they knew. "Look out for these signs," Jesus said, sounding more urgent. People will try to make everyone the same, erasing what makes us different. People will become more evil and stop caring about each other. Then I saw something that shocked me. In a blink, millions of people just disappeared from Earth. Everyone left behind was confused and scared. "That's the rapture," Jesus explained. "When I'll take my faithful people away before the worst trouble starts." As the visions ended, Jesus sounded even more urgent. "There's not much time, Amelia. You need to warn people and help them get ready." I knew then how important this message was. It could save so many people. The vision shifted, and I found myself standing amidst a sea of people, their faces upturned in adoration. At the center of their attention stood a man, his charisma radiating like a beacon. His smile was dazzling, his words honeyed and captivating. Yet, as I looked closer, I sensed a darkness lurking behind his eyes, a malevolence that sent a chill down my spine. Jesus' voice whispered in my ear, heavy with sorrow, "Behold the great deception that will engulf the world. Many will be led astray, even those who once called themselves my followers." As I watched, the charismatic leader's influence spread like wildfire. His message of unity and peace resonated with people from all walks of life. I saw nations laying down their arms, age-old enemies embracing, and a new world order taking shape. It seemed too good to be true, and as Jesus revealed, it was. The leader's true nature began to show itself in subtle ways. Dissenting voices were quietly silenced. Those who questioned the new order found themselves ostracized, their concerns dismissed as paranoia or conspiracy theories. The media, once a bastion of truth, became a mouthpiece for propaganda, spinning tales of progress and harmony while ignoring the growing shadows. I witnessed the insidious ways this deception manifested in society. Children were taught to prioritize global citizenship over individual beliefs. Technology was used to monitor and control, all under the guise of safety and efficiency. Even houses of worship were not immune, as a new, all-encompassing spirituality replaced traditional faiths. My heart ached as I saw believers I recognized from my own community falling prey to the deception. Their faith, once strong, was eroded by promises of earthly paradise and scientific breakthroughs that seemed to render old beliefs obsolete. "How can they be so blind?" I asked, my voice trembling with dismay. Jesus' response was gentle but firm. "The human heart is easily swayed by what it wishes to believe. Many will choose comfort and false security over the narrow path of truth." As the vision continued, I saw pockets of resistance, small groups gathering in secret, clinging to their faith and warning others of the deception. These were the ones who had heeded the signs, who had strengthened their spiritual discernment in preparation for this time. "Remember this, Amelia," Jesus said. His eyes locked on mine. "The truth will always be available to those who earnestly seek it, but in the days to come, it will require great courage and unwavering faith to stand against the tide of deception." The vision began to fade, but not before I glimpsed the final outcome of this worldwide delusion. The smiling leader, his mask of benevolence finally discarded, revealed himself as the Antichrist foretold in Scripture. Those who had followed him found themselves trapped in a system that demanded total allegiance, their souls in peril. As I returned to the present moment, still bathed in the divine light of Jesus' presence, I felt the weight of this knowledge settle upon me. The warning was clear. A time of unprecedented deception was coming, and only those firmly rooted in truth would be able to withstand it. The vision shifted once more, and I found myself standing before a vast sea of humanity. A gentle breeze rippled through the crowd, carrying a sense of anticipation and hope. Above them all, a single flag waved, its design blending colors and symbols from every nation on earth. The sight stirred something deep within me. Jesus whispered in my ear, his voice soft yet sad. "Behold, Amelia, the world's cry for oneness." As I watched, society transformed. Nations dissolved their borders, forming continent-spanning coalitions. A new global language emerged, allowing easy communication worldwide. Religious leaders from different faiths merged their beliefs into one spirituality. At first, it seemed like a perfect world, but as I looked closer, guided by Jesus, I saw cracks in this facade of harmony. Under the surface of smiles and handshakes, a darker current flowed. The real cost of this unity became clear. I saw how individuality was being worn away. People who held on to their unique cultures or beliefs were pushed aside, pressured to fit the new global mold. The vibrant diversity of humanity was fading into sameness. Jesus spoke, his voice heavy. "People have always tried to unite under one banner, but without me at the center, that unity comes at a high price." I saw flashes of past global empires, each leaving behind oppression and lost identities. This new push for unity followed the same pattern, promising peace, but planting seeds of control. As the vision continued, I watched opposing voices get silenced, not by force, but through subtle social and economic pressure. People who questioned the new system were cut off from resources and opportunities, their worries brushed off as old-fashioned or divisive. The once beautiful flag now looked ominous. Its shadow spread over the crowd, growing darker and more oppressive. What started as a dream of harmony was turning into a nightmare of forced conformity. As the vision faded, I turned to Jesus. My heart felt heavy. His face was serious, his eyes showing sadness and resolve. I realized this wasn't just a warning. It was a call to action, reminding me how important it is to stay true to my faith when the world wants easy answers and false unity. The ground shook violently beneath my feet. I watched in shock as the landscape changed before my eyes. Huge cracks split the earth, breaking continents apart like puzzle pieces. The noise was deafening. Jesus spoke calmly but sadly. "Look, Amelia, nature is rebelling. The earth can't bear humanity's sins anymore." I saw unbelievable disasters unfolding. Long, quiet volcanoes exploded, shooting ash high into the sky. The sun disappeared behind dark clouds. Giant waves crashed into cities, swallowing them whole. The scenes changed quickly. Massive hurricanes combined into even bigger storms, reshaping coastlines with their powerful winds. Huge fires burned across entire continents, creating their own weather. The Earth's magnetic poles started to shift, messing up technology and confusing animals everywhere. "The balance of nature is breaking down," Jesus said, his words heavy with prophecy. Glaciers fell into the ocean, making sea levels rise suddenly. Whole islands vanished underwater. Big coastal cities became modern versions of Atlantis. In other places, extreme droughts turned farmland into deserts, forcing millions of people to leave their homes. The human cost was enormous. Refugee camps got bigger and bigger, stretching across borders. Countries already struggling to cope couldn't handle the flood of people. New diseases appeared as the permafrost melted, challenging doctors and overwhelming hospitals. As I watched all this, I remembered scientists' warnings about climate change. But this was so much worse than anyone predicted. It was like the planet itself was fighting back after years of abuse. I saw world leaders meeting desperately, trying to deal with problems they couldn't control. Scientists worked nonstop to find answers, but solutions seemed impossible. Religious leaders everywhere called for prayer, hoping for a miracle. In all this chaos, people were desperate for answers. They looked everywhere for hope. To science, to faith, to powerful leaders promising to save them. As the visions faded, Jesus spoke one last time. "These events will shake the world to its core," he said, sounding both worried and caring. "People will cry out for help and answers. Their hearts will be open to the truth, but also easily fooled by lies." Jesus' words hit me hard. The time is near. His eyes were urgent, and I felt the weight of what he was saying. "Amelia," he said firmly but kindly, "the world's in trouble, and many aren't ready. Even some who follow me aren't paying attention to what's happening." I thought about people in my church who seemed clueless about the spiritual battles around us. I listened closely, wanting to know what to do. "To get through what's coming," he went on, "faith has to be part of everything you do." Then Jesus gave me some clear steps to get ready spiritually. He talked about praying and reading the Bible every day. "Let my word guide you," he said. He also said believers need to stick together and support each other in small groups. As he spoke, I started thinking of ways to do these things and tell others. Then Jesus got really serious, and I knew he was about to say something big. "Amelia," he said quietly but intensely, "being able to spot what's true will be super important. There'll be people saying things that sound good, but aren't. Only those who really know me will be able to tell what's real." I wondered how I could get this urgent message across to people who might not believe it. Jesus smiled like he knew what I was thinking. "Your story will be powerful," he said. "How your faith has changed will mean more than any argument. Just share what happened to you and let my spirit work through your words." Right then, my faith became rock solid. I'd seen a glimpse of the spiritual world, and I knew I'd never look at things the same way again. As I realized this, the bright light around us started to fade. I felt a tug, like I was waking up from a dream. My time in heaven was ending, but Jesus' urgent message stayed with me, like a guiding light for what's ahead. The steady beep of heart monitors slowly broke through my unconsciousness, getting louder as I woke up. I struggled to open my eyes, finally seeing the white hospital ceiling above me. It was so different from the bright light I'd just seen. The smell of disinfectant hit me, replacing the heavenly scent from before. I felt tubes and wires attached to my body, and an oxygen mask on my face. My chest hurt with each heartbeat, and my fingers felt weak when I tried to move them. It was overwhelming to be back in the real world after what I'd just experienced. I couldn't wrap my head around everything that had happened, but I felt the importance of Jesus' message weighing on me. As my eyes got used to the light, I saw Mark sitting next to my bed. He looked worried and relieved at the same time. "Amelia?" he said softly, his voice shaking. "Oh, thank God. I thought I'd lost you." I wanted to speak, but my throat was too dry. How could I even begin to tell him about standing in front of Jesus while he thought I was dying? A doctor came in and told us I'd had a sudden cardiac arrest. My heart had stopped for 7 minutes before they brought me back. He said it was amazing I'd recovered without brain damage, which doesn't often happen in cases like mine. As the doctor kept talking, I found myself thinking about Jesus' words instead. I knew there was more to my survival than just luck or good medical care. I had a purpose now. Mark held my hand, bringing me back to the moment. Looking at his tearful face, I realized how much had changed. I wasn't the same person he knew before. This experience had completely transformed me. Now I had to figure out how to share that transformation with Mark and everyone else. The hospital room felt strange as I looked around, taking in every detail like it was new. The blue curtains, beeping monitors, and plain sailing all seemed more important now. It was like my near-death experience had changed how I saw everything. I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Jesus' presence and his message were so different from the busy hospital around me. Nurses came and went, doing their jobs, but it all seemed less important now that I knew what I did. I was stuck between two worlds, my new mission from God and my need to get better. How could I do both? I wanted to tell everyone what I'd learned, but the doctor said I needed to rest. I worried about how I'd share my story. Would people believe me? Could I be brave enough to tell the truth even if people thought I was crazy? My husband Mark could tell something was different. "You seem changed," he said one day, looking worried. "I know you've been through a lot, but it's like you're not really here." I tried to explain, but how could I make him understand something so big? As I got stronger, I realized my old life was gone. I wasn't the same Amelia who collapsed in her kitchen. Now I knew what life was really about, but how could I live that way when no one else seemed to get it? Getting ready to leave the hospital made me nervous. In here, people could blame my experience on drugs or trauma, but out there, I'd have to deal with friends and family not believing me, strangers making fun of me and figuring out how to use what I'd learned. My new purpose felt heavy, and I knew it would be harder than just getting better physically. As I got ready to go home, I held on to Jesus' words. They gave me strength and reminded me why this was so important. I didn't know exactly what to do, but I was determined to figure it out, no matter what. The familiar sight of our modest 2-story house loomed before me as Mark pulled into the driveway. My heart fluttered with unexpected emotion. Everything looked exactly as I had left it, yet I felt like a stranger returning to a life that no longer fit. Stepping out of the car, leaning on Mark's arm, the weight of my new purpose pressed down on me. The peaceful suburban scene clashed with my inner turmoil. Lisa ran out, face beaming. "Mom!" she cried, hugging me tightly. I breathed in the familiar scent of her hair. Over her head, I saw Sarah in the doorway, her eyes a mix of relief and worry. Inside, every detail seemed to belong to a past life. Family photos, stacked mail, the smell of Sarah's cooking, all felt oddly foreign. I sank into my favorite chair, wondering how to bridge the gap between this world and the divine realm I'd experienced. The next few days brought visitors and attempts at normalcy. I struggled to care about groceries and schedules when my mind was full of visions and the need to prepare. Mark watched me with concern. One evening on the porch, he said, "Honey, we're worried about you. You seem so far away." I turned to him, my voice shaky. "Mark, what happened to me was real. It changed everything. I have a message now, a purpose. I don't know how to fit that into our life here." His eyes widened with confusion and fear. Our once comfortable relationship now felt strained by my secret knowledge. That night, I stood at the window, looking at the stars. The vast sky seemed to echo the huge task ahead. How could I share my message? Who would believe me? How could I do this without pushing away the people I love? I felt the weight of the truth I now carried. The old Amelia was gone, replaced by someone who understood life's real purpose. As I turned from the window, I knew the real challenge was just starting. It was time to find a way to connect the earthly and divine, to bring my urgent message to a world that needed it. The small church fellowship hall buzzed with quiet conversation as I made my way to the front of the room. My heart raced, pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. As I turned to face the familiar faces of my church group, a wave of anxiety washed over me. These were people I had known for years, friends who had supported me through my health crisis. But would they believe what I was about to share? Pastor David nodded encouragingly, sensing my nervousness. "Amelia has asked to share something with us tonight," he announced, his warm voice quieting the room. I know we're all glad to have her back with us after her ordeal. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the edges of the lectern. Thank you all for your prayers and support, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. I cleared my throat and continued. What I'm about to share may sound unbelievable, but I promise it's true. During my cardiac arrest, I experienced something extraordinary. As I told them about my encounter with Jesus and his message, I watched their reactions. Some leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder. Others shifted uncomfortably, exchanging skeptical glances. I saw confusion, awe, and even fear on their faces. Mrs. Thompson, our eldest member, nodded vigorously, her eyes shining with tears. Praise the Lord, she murmured. But next to her, Mr. Jacobs frowned, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. I kept going, sharing the warnings about the coming hard times. We need to get ready spiritually, I said, and help others do the same. When I finished, the room fell silent. Pastor David stepped forward, looking thoughtful. Thank you, Amelia, he said carefully. I'm sure this was a powerful experience for you. Let's take some time to pray and think about what we've heard. After the prayer, everyone started talking at once. Mrs. Thompson rushed over to hug me, crying. I always knew you were special, dear, she said. Some people came up to ask questions or offer support, while others stayed back, looking unsure. I overheard Mr. Jacobs talking to Pastor David, sounding worried. We can't just believe this without asking questions, he was saying. What if it's just confusion from her trauma? Pastor David tried to calm everyone down, reminding us to be careful but open-minded. We shouldn't dismiss Amelia's experience, but we also shouldn't accept it without thinking it through, he said. Let's keep praying for guidance. Driving home that night, I felt relieved, frustrated, and determined all at once. I'd taken the first step in sharing my message, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. The way my church friends reacted showed me how hard this job would be. But remembering Jesus' words made me feel stronger. This was just the start. Whether they believed me or not, I had to keep telling the truth I'd been given. I'd planted the seed, and I hoped that over time it would grow. The community center buzzed with life as people poured in, their faces a mix of curiosity and doubt. Standing at the podium, I felt my heart racing. This was my largest audience yet. People from all walks of life gathered in one room. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. When I started speaking, my voice trembled, but it gradually grew steadier. I told them everything about my near-death experience and the divine encounter that turned my world upside down. The room grew so quiet that I could hear my own breathing, every pair of eyes fixed on me. Some leaned forward in their seats, wide-eyed, while others furrowed their brows, grappling with my words. I felt the enormous weight of responsibility pressing on me. I had to get my message across, no matter what. When I described the urgent warnings I had received, tension gripped the room. Some people nodded in agreement, their expressions serious. Others shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling to accept what I was saying. When it was time for questions, hands shot up across the room. An elderly man in the front, his voice shaky with emotion, told me my story had reignited his faith. A young woman, tears streaming down her cheeks, asked how she could prepare for what was coming, but not everyone was moved. A man in a crisp suit stood up and challenged me, demanding proof of my experience. I met each question with patience and honesty, hoping my words would leave a lasting impression. As the night wore on, I sensed a change in the atmosphere. Even the skeptics seemed to be reflecting deeply, their initial resistance softening. After the event, a small group lingered to speak with me. A local pastor invited me to speak at his church, and a reporter approached me for an interview. Excitement mixed with apprehension as I considered the new opportunities unfolding before me. Driving home that night, I replayed the evening in my mind. I had reached people who were willing to listen, but I knew opposition would follow. The road ahead would be challenging, but I felt more determined than ever to stay true to my calling, no matter the cost. The evening news flickered on the TV, casting a faint glow across my living room. Perched on the edge of the sofa, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, I listened intently to the anchor's somber voice. A chill ran down my spine as the events on the screen unfolded. Breaking news. Unprecedented natural disasters have struck multiple continents at once, the anchor announced, his tone grim. Massive earthquakes have devastated coastal regions in South America and Southeast Asia, while North America and Australia face severe droughts and wildfires. My heart pounded as vivid images filled the screen. Crumbled buildings in Rio, flooded streets in Jakarta, and scorched farmland in California. I grabbed my notebook, my hand trembling as I jotted down every detail. The anchor spoke of a global call for unity, with world leaders proposing a new international body to manage relief efforts and combat climate change. Then I saw it. A familiar flag fluttered behind the speakers at a UN emergency meeting, and my pen froze mid-sentence. A man appeared on screen, charismatic, magnetic, and deeply unsettling. His smooth voice sent chills down my spine. I recognized him instantly. He was the leader from my vision, the one destined to mislead so many with his promises of peace and safety. "We're at a turning point," he declared, his gaze piercing through the camera. "Only by coming together as one world can we overcome these challenges and create a better future for everyone." The broadcast ended, but I remained frozen, staring at the dark screen. My visions had been confirmed, and the weight of what I knew pressed down on me. How could I help others see the truth behind these events? Grabbing my phone, I scrolled through my contacts, my mind racing. I couldn't afford to wait. This was bigger than small meetings and local gatherings. It was time to reach a wider audience. With a deep breath, I dialed the number of a local news station. As the phone rang, my fingers trembled. This was it. My life was about to change forever. The urgency of Jesus' words echoed in my mind, reminding me of the critical task ahead. "The time is near," he had said, his eyes filled with love and sorrow. Sitting in my living room, the weight of his message pressed on my heart, pushing me to keep spreading the word despite the challenges. I remembered the people I'd talked to, some hopeful, others doubtful. But the truth was clear, backed up by what was happening around us. Natural disasters got worse, political leaders pushed for global unity, and people turned away from faith more and more. My heart hurt for those who weren't ready, who didn't know what was coming. I took a deep breath, finding strength in my beliefs. The road ahead would be tough, but I knew what I had to do. I stood up, feeling determined. There was no time to lose. I needed to reach more people, to warn them louder than ever. The world had to hear this message, and I would share it, no matter what it took.